Good day, everybody. Welcome back to our monthly Dalim tips and tricks after a couple of month hiatus. If hopefully a lot of y'all were able to watch some of the Dalim on air webinar stuff that they did. Pretty useful information, some good stuff that they covered. I think Dalim's doing a good job trying to reach out to everybody in the middle of everything that's going on right now. So we're back. We should be monthly again. Depending on schedules, usually it's the third week of the month, but this time, we're doing fourth. Next month as well, in August, it'll be the fourth Wednesday because of some training and a couple of vacation things that are happening before that. So just a heads up there. On that, I'll turn it over to Alex and let him cover ES notifications. Go ahead, Alex. Thanks.
Sure thing. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex, and today I'll be discussing ES notifications, as Fred mentioned. We have to update our slides because I think these are about a decade old at this point. But for the GoToWebinar settings, there should be, probably not where the screenshot shows, but there should be somewhere on the top bar a zoom button you can use to control the screen zooming if mine displays too large or too small. There is also in the control panel an area where you can type any questions you may have. If anything particularly relevant pops up, I may pause to address it. Otherwise, we typically go over those questions at the end of the session. As mentioned, this is part of our monthly webinar series. Well, monthly except for the last few months, but we typically do on the third Wednesday of each month. And as soon as we know what we're going to be doing for the next month, we'll put some information on our website at blanchardsystems.com/events. I have also been posting notices to our Zendesk customer portal too. So if you keep an eye out there, you should be able to register from there as well. This is going to be a webinar, or it's going to be an introductory webinar on notifications. We've had a lot of new folks come in at some of our customers who are getting used to ES, and we've got a lot of more questions than normal about ES notifications. So it seems like a good time to do an introductory review of how ES notifications work. So we're going to go over the basics of concepts of how the ES notification system is set up, how to enable and configure notifications, either at the individual user level or as sort of a template at the customer level. We're going to talk about how you can customize notification text, either globally or for specific customers. Talk about configuring milestone-based notifications, which are another odd case sometimes. Approval reminders and other common pitfalls that we tend to run into with the ES notification systems, some nuances of user versus role-based notifications, monitoring and troubleshooting notification issues in general, and then one-off cases like digital delivery emails or sharing links, which don't really fall into the official ES notification system, but are often used to communicate with customers. So now that we've got the intro out of the way here, ES notifications, if I'm just logged in as an average user, I can go in, assuming my profile lets me see it, I can go click on my little name area here. I can click User Preferences. I'll make my screen a little bigger here. And under this Notification tab, there's a number of different events that I can configure notifications for. The ES notification system is built around the idea of these events. So for example, at the project level, I can be notified when a project is created, when it's modified, or when a file is uploaded. On the individual document level, I can be notified when a file is on approval, when it's been approved, when it's been rejected, or when someone's made annotations or notes on it. For any of these options, I can go in here and say, for example, for file upload, I can say do not notify. I can say I want group notifications or I want ungrouped notifications. Now this brings into mind the concept of what Dalim calls a notification cycle. If you do not group and you set this to 1 minute or basically instantly, then every time that I do something that's going to trigger a notification, it's going to send me a mail. So I'll make a simple, another simple project here. Actually, I'll make myself an approver in here too, just sorry if this is a little cluttered here. I'm limited screen space, so as long as I have enough room to upload a file here, I'm happy. So let's go in here and let's upload a file or two. I think I have the do not group one for those. And I actually have a fake mail server running on here that dumps everything into this web page for me. And you can see here that this is not grouped. I got two mails sent to me. So I got this one for demo mailer R2, and I got a second mail for demo mailer R1. Those are two different files here. If I click on those, it'll bring up a link that I can use if I log in. I can go and view the file in Dialog and potentially approve or reject if I need to right from that mail. So I got those two different mails. Those are going to the email address that's configured on my account. But if you're dealing with a lot of files in here, and there's a lot of systems like this that deal with, they send one notification per file or per event or whatever, and that can get to be a little bit overwhelming. So you can also do group notifications. I'm going to set this to, I'm probably pushing my luck here with a 1-minute grouping, but I'm going to go ahead here and let me delete those files I uploaded. I'm going to push in, this one I'll dump in 4 files here. And yep, you'll see we got this time in our email, instead of like the last one where we had just one file listed in here, now we have entries for all 4 different files in this one email. So when you have mail set to not group, you're generally going to get a mail instantaneously for every single event that triggers a notification in ES. If you have it set to group, then you have a notification cycle in here. Normally you're not doing 1 minute, you might have like 5 or 10 minutes or an hour. So if I had this set to 10 minutes, then what this would do is whenever a file came in and triggered this file upload notification, then that would start a timer and it would wait for 10 minutes. And every additional file that was uploaded that I had permission to see would count towards that notification cycle and get added into that eventual notification. Then when that 10 minutes was up at the very end, then ES would send out an email that had links and information about all of the pages that came in during that 10-minute period. So it's a way you can simplify things a little there. Now, I think what was I going to show next here? I just lost my train of thought. So that's, yeah, grouped versus non-grouped emails. Now, some of these other ones do behave a little differently. For example, most of these work whenever an event happens at your level of hierarchy in ES. So, if, for example, if you're a user in, let me go to one of my customers. So, for example, if you're a user in a check collectors monthly, and you had that enabled for your account, then you would get notified whenever anyone uploaded to a page to a project in A-Track Collectors Monthly. You could also limit this so that if you had only users assigned to project enabled, then that would only notify you if an upload occurred in a project that you were assigned to personally. So you would need to be in here, hope if I could spell here. Here, she's not in that org, but I could do, so if I were assigned, if Tim were assigned to this project, he could, and this only users assigned to project button were enabled here, he would only get notifications for files that were assigned, that were uploaded to a project that he was assigned to or explicitly made a part of to help cut down on those emails. Approvals have a few different quirks to them too. For most of these, like I said, project creation, file upload, file approved, file rejected, those are generally by default, every file that comes in the area of ES you can see, you get a notification for. File and approval is a little special because you only get notified if a file is waiting for your approval specifically. So if I do a do not group, I'll do 1 minute. And if I were to come over here and upload one file, and I should see over here in my inbox in a second, I get a notification for it. But if we tweak this and we say, for example, maybe I'm not the approver in this project, and we make Tim the approver. And if I come back here and I upload a new page, then this time I'm not going to get a notification because I'm not defined as the approver, so no notification there. Those all do work a little differently. One to watch out for, which I'm going to specifically skip over right now, is this file approval summary, because that tends to cause a lot of grief for people. These notification settings are ultimately done at the user level. Every user in the system has their own unique notification settings. If you give users permission in their user profile, they can set those themselves. You can disable that if it's a file upload notification. Good, I didn't mess anything up there. I forgot I had those enabled. But every user, if you don't give them permission, you can also set their notification settings for them in the administrative area here. And that can be done either at the user level or at the org level, but it ultimately filters down to the individual users. When you're setting it for a customer org, you tend to be setting sort of like a default. So for example, here I have, let's say I want to put project creation notifications on for all users in HREC Collectors Monthly. I can go in here to this, and I can say I want group project creation notifications every 24 hours. And if I don't click apply changes to all users, I'm setting a default for any new users that are created in this org from this point on. So if I were to go to create a new user, you'll see that that new user automatically inherits those customer level settings by default. So, but it didn't mess with any of my other users' existing settings. If you have a case where you want to reconfigure an entire org or an entire customer's settings on the fly, then you can click that apply changes to all users. So I could say I want a group project creation every 13 hours, and I want grouped every 24 hours of project modification. Then if I click the save button here and I go back and I look at these users, their notification settings have all been adjusted and been reset to match my default for this customer. So that's the basics of how those are configured. But one of the things that you can do too is you might not want this default notification format as Dalim configures it. So you do have the ability to customize that notification format and text. If you're in the admin tab at ES, there's an area down here, notifications. And the setup here it's a little retro. It was designed back, I think, about 10 years ago or whenever the notification area in ES was designed to handle both email notifications and RSS feeds, where you could publish basically a feed online that people could follow to see when things were happening in files. But RSS has unfortunately fallen out of style, so there's still an extra kind of layer of configuration here that I think is left over from when that was the norm. But the way this works is in ES is as a concept, you have notification events, you have notification templates, and then you have email templates. A notification event would be the specific action that triggers a notification. So file approved, file rejected, file on approval, milestone on approval for a specific milestone. Those are all events that in ES's notification system constitute something that could cause a mail to be sent. In notification templates are what are used to map those to the specific text of notifications. We've got something called an email template, this is separate from the actual event. It's basically just a mail that can be sent out during some notification event. So, dear username, this is automatic email, some modifications have been made, that sort of thing, where it's the actual text of the email. Those are linked to the notification events by what we call the notification template here. So you can see that, and this allows you to reuse some of these notifications for different purposes. So with the stock templates that Dalim ships, they've got in here, for example, file approved, file rejected, file and approval, for example. They all use this file event or file event short template, so that you can set up one template and use it for multiple events, different events if you want to. So in this case, if we wanted to change the text of the file uploaded email, we can see that's currently using file event short. So if we wanted to modify a file event short, we could go to the actual email template. These can be set up for multiple languages, so that based on user's preference, you'll get an email in a different language. I can type in some custom text. And if I were to go and upload a new file to my project here, get rid of one of these, pop in a new file here. I might have actually done the wrong one there. Let's see, 1 second. Oh, actually, no, that is the right one. Where is it? File event short. I think I got the wrong one here. So file upload is file event short. Did I do file event short? Learning experience. I did get a test in here. Oh, I know what it is. I was doing some testing earlier at my org, which is actually a good segue. You can customize these notifications at the organization level or the customer level as well, which is what I did here, which is why that's not working. I'm going to actually hit the reset button here. These checkboxes, this is what I was going to show next. These checkboxes tell you whether or not you're using the global notification text as set or whether you have anything customized for that specific customer or org. So there we go. If I upload this file again, and this time we should get the, yep, so we got our custom text that time. And if you were to, let me go back to my notifications here. And if you want to, you can also use variables in here. There is, I took from Dalim's documentation, I think there are more you can use than are listed here. I think this is a very low bar, but there's different variables you can use in here to say different things. So, for example, if I want to put the, you can see in here that, for example, the $sign in parentheses there are the signifier that you're using a variable in here. So customer, job name, job ID, you can use those wherever you want in here. You can also, I think, I'm not 100% on this, but I think anything that's defined as a variable in show context, might take a sec to load here. I think that most of these are accessible in those mails too, but I'm not 100% on all of these. I think it comes down to scope for a lot of them. So if you've got some in here like document name and you're sending a project level mail, those might not work. But if you want to, you can always try for any of these $sign and then parentheses and then putting the current MIME type. Or yeah, we can actually try that one real quick if we want a good example.
Yeah, listen, while you're at that, we do have a question instead of jumping back to, since it's on grouping, I'll read it now. So if you group at a document level for file approval and file rejected and are grouped at 1 hour, Would you get one combined email containing both file approval and file rejected, or would you get two emails hourly, one for file approval, one for file rejected?
You would get, in that case, two emails, one for file approved and file rejected. The emails are grouped based on the notification event, not overall. So they're also, when they're grouped for your user, they're grouped across customer lines. So if you're working with two different customers in the system, if I have both 8-Track Collectors Monthly and Demo Corp, and I have notifications for file upload enabled, I won't get, so there's no way to configure separate notifications for files that were uploaded to one customer and to another.
I think there's an SCR for that.
Yeah, that's been requested because there's a pitfall that comes into play with that later, which I'll demonstrate a little later in the webinar, but that is something we've had requested, and it's not possible right now. So it would be, you get one email per event, and those events emails will contain any notification events across any customers and any projects that you deal with. So I'm going to upload a new file here, and then we'll see if that MIME type change I made worked here. That might not be one that we can use, but we'll test it and see. I got too many windows here. Actually, I think I might need to delete a few of those. Which one didn't I upload? R2. Let's do simple test. Go back to my, yeah, that one actually worked. Cool. Saw it as application PDF. So, yeah, in addition to the Dalim's official list, you can try anything in with a log, show context variables in that same format. So those should all I got a second question actually on that follow-up to that first one. Is this different in ES6 versus 5.5? Our grouped emails currently send both approvals. It might be based on, I would need to see the specific workflow in that case. I'm pretty sure it's always worked this way. It could be possible that it's based on template, but I'm doubtful there. So it might depend on how the notification's configured. If
Yeah, I'd have to test it. I haven't really paid attention to it in a while.
Yeah, my recollection of it at least is that it's always behaved this way, where those always are separate. They're not grouped together, but there could be like another mechanism in your workflow specifically that's working around it to combine those. But let's see here. So the one other thing you can do too in here, in addition to those variables, is you can also use metadata in emails. So for example, if you, and this actually would be a good example, we can show this at the customer level now too. So I have, for one of my projects here, I have, actually I think I have that set globally. I have a webinar project settings job ticket here, or I can set some things like job code and printer name, printer location. You can reference these as well in an email. So the syntax is a little different from other places in ES. In this case, this is from my, let's say we need to do print location. This is configured in customization metadata sets. I have, that is a translation on the name, but it's just print location. So then the format would be, if I can, I'll actually open up a text editor so I can type it out. And so the format would be $, and it would be, normally you can do just, if it were like page metadata, I think you can do metadata / value, something like that. But for something like this where we want to grab from the job level, the specific format would be the scope of the metadata. This is job level metadata, so we put job at front, /metadata. We need the prefix or the name of, actually it's the name of the metadata set, which in this case is webinar. And then we want print location for the name of the metadata property. And so if we were to edit our mail again, actually I don't need 2 of those there. I'll make that non-bold. Assuming I made no typos, if I upload something else to this project, then we should see so in this case, you'll see we pulled from that job ticket. The print location was New Orleans. So you can customize this if you're collecting your own unique data. You can make use of that in these templates. If you don't want to use one of Dalim's templates, you can also customize. If you don't want to use, like for example, file event short for all these different events, like if you want different notification text for approval and rejection and upload, you can build your own templates in here. And those actually might be better than Dalim's in some cases, because these templates date back to the early days of ES, and they don't use a few new features that we have that are useful here. Specifically, let's make a new one. We'll just call it file upload. Let's use the language here is English. And we could do, actually just to show an example of one of those pitfalls here, I'm going to, I think customer code is the correct syntax here. Customer code, file uploaded. Now, the Dalim emails we were looking at before were from an older version of ES that didn't have this header, body, footer distinction. So they had the whole text block in there, and then that text block repeated for some of those grouped emails, if I can find one of them in here still. They just repeated the entire body of the email over and over, which is a little clunky, especially if you're dealing with large amounts of data. So one thing you could do in here is you can put hello username, a header, which will always appear once at the top of the email, the body. So these files were just uploaded. And then I could put, for example, a bullet point in here. And we'll put file name. We can make that a link. I think dialog ES URL is the one we want for, let's try dialog URL first. I'll try this one first. I think this is one I've seen used around in the default templates. I haven't seen it documented, but and then put a sign off at the end of that mail. I think I need to, yep, that is English. So if I were to go in here and I could change the event notification setup for file upload to use that template instead. Now if I were to go over here and upload another file, we'll see we got, I think that actually should be a, that might be the wrong link. It might be that dialog URL, I think, is what I should have done. That just takes me to the project. But one of the benefits of this format is if you do grouping, so if we changed our mail setup to grouping for this user, and we did, actually it is set to grouping, I just didn't upload multiple files. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing here. So let me upload 4 files here. Now you'll see this time we got multiple files in the same email. This is actually one of the pitfalls of, I think I got a few duplicates here, one of the pitfalls of grouping on a really short time period, like 1 minute, is that depending on when the notification cycle fires, you might get 2 emails there. But that's why it's usually good to make grouped cycles no less than 3 or 4 minutes, I think Dalim has said in the past. But you can see here that rather than having that whole message repeat over and over and over, this time we got our header, we got our body, which repeated once per file in the group notification, and then we got our sign off at the end. So one problem with, as came up earlier, how you can't split these per customer. If you were to upload, I think I'd actually need to make that 2 minutes to show, because I don't think I can do it fast enough otherwise, is if you group 2 minutes, we'll actually make one called, I'll name them for the 2 different customers, track and MyC. And we'll upload this one to, I think we're actually in my customer right now. I'll upload another one to I hope I did that quick enough. A little out of sequence here, but it's actually a good time to show you the notification monitoring that's new in ES6. If I go to System Tools, I think it should be under notification monitoring. There we go. There we go. I guess I probably did actually just send, but you can monitor here to see if it's sending mail in real time. Let's check and see if that might actually. So yeah, this is one of the problems of why we've had complaints about that grouping. Is I just uploaded files to 2 different customers in my ES to 8-Track Collectors Monthly and my customer. Here we got the customer code for my customer, but the files from both of them are grouped together because that's done globally. So when you use customer or job specific information in the header of a grouped email, and it gets files from multiple places, it's going to pull that from whichever file kicks off that notification cycle, which can be misleading in cases like this. That's one of the downsides of the current system. So just something to be aware of, because I know we've had people try doing stuff like that and get confused. Generally, if you want to do this, it's perfectly fine. You just write them as if they're going to be non-grouped emails. And then for anything that's going to be grouped, you tend to make the subject and the header and footer very customer agnostic. And then anything that's specific to the job, you can tack on to the body for the specific lines. So that it might tell you, for example, the name of the customer right after the file name here, and the name of the project right after the file name here. So you have that all in those lines for the body there. So just something to keep in mind. Now, as I mentioned, you can customize this on the individual customer level too. So if you wanted to, for example, do I have a user here in 8-Track Collectors? So for 8-Track Collectors Monthly, if I go into this email screen, I see a list of all the notification events I've configured on my system. And I can click on these and I can go in here and I can edit them, and is it actually going to show me the, oh, that's because I had a custom one here before. I'll reset that. It should pull the, yeah, it's just going to pull the defaults. So what we can do here is, I'll just put something very obvious in here. And let's configure notifications for Nora here. I'll give her an email address. And let's give her do not notify, do not notify. Let's do not group here. 1 minute. Now if I were to pop back to this project and I'll actually clear up my mail queue here so that it's simpler. I'm going to my project. I'm going to upload a file in here. This should trigger 2 emails. And this is an important point here. As you see, I got 2 emails here. One to me, and Nora got an email too. And my email is using that one that we just configured at the global level. Nora's email is using the custom mail we configured for the HRAC collectors quarterly. But that file was uploaded to HRAC collectors monthly here. So what it comes down to is those notification custom emails you set up for a specific organization, unit, or a customer only apply to users in that customer. Since Nora's a member of HRAC Collectors Monthly, she got the custom email we configured at this level. Since I'm under main organization, I got the notification that was configured for main organization's user, even though this was in the HRAC Collectors Monthly customer. So whatever notifications are configured, text is configured for your organization is what you'll get. So now you can also customize these a little more with milestones in particular is where it tends to come up. Approvals in general, the text tends to be fairly standard. If you've got an approval in one project or another, generally for a user it's not going to matter, but you may have specific points in the workflow where you want very specific text to go out. So you have the ability in ES when you create milestones for workflows. If I go ahead and create one of these, you have the ability to open our test milestone. You have the ability to go ahead in here and click Use as a Notification. And then when you do that, then under Notifications, Notification Templates, then you can click in here and say, did I click the right thing here? Hang on. Action. Oh yeah, milestone and approval. Milestone name is webinar test milestone. And then you can link that to one of your email templates and have it so that notifications specific to that milestone are a little different. Now those also get enabled in a different spot in user preferences. So you can see under, you've got all the normal standard stuff here for project creation, document approval. There's also a milestone section here which shows you all the milestones that have notifications enabled. And I think this is just because of the nature of how this works. They don't have it coded where they'll draw out those extra boxes for this. It shows you a table down here, and this is, I know this has confused some folks in the past. It gives you a table. You've got the milestone name here, and then you've got really, it isn't 100% clear from this, but you've got 4 different things you can get notified for on any of those milestones. The first is on approval, which is when that milestone is waiting at a milestone approval step, and you want an email specifically for that. You've got milestone summary, which is, well, I'll get into the summaries later, but they're basically reminders that you have work that hasn't been approved that's waiting for you. Ended means when a file runs through a milestone. Either it means it's been approved or it was not an approval milestone and it was just a status milestone that the file passed through. And then deadline summary, which is, I believe that's when you have a deadline associated with the milestone, you can specify to get a notification, for example, 1 day in advance of that deadline. So it'll make a little more sense here if I show you, but these are all, when you're configuring those notification templates, those milestone, some of those milestone events like milestone, actually I'll open a new one here because it's getting confusing. Yeah, so Milestone completed, Milestone on approval are separate as far as the templates they use. So those would need to have, they could both use the same email template, but they both need to be defined for your Milestone in here and linked to an email template. So I built a few examples of these I'll show real quick that I think are kind of cool. So I built I'll show you real quick a workflow we're working with. I built a workflow here that at the project level, we're dealing with, we have a project where we need a PO number before any work can come through. So the project's created, it waits until the CSR enters a PO number. Until then, it won't let any files process. After that, it waits for approval, and then we've got to wait. It waits, and then marks it as completed once all the files are in and have been delivered to press. At the document level, we've got the same kind of thing where files come in. They wait for that PO number to be entered at the project level, and they won't go any further until that's done. After that, they go through one simple approval cycle. Files are delivered to the printer and marked as delivered. So there's a few different points we might want notifications in here. And the first two that come to my mind are, one, we want someone to get notified when we're waiting for PO number so the project doesn't just sit there and hang. And the second is we want uploaders, people who are responsible for file uploads, to know when files have passed that PO number point in the workflow, and that's been good to go. So I also did so for the first one, let's do the PO number one first because that's simple. So I have a notification set up for that PO. So my notification template is Milestone on approval, enter PO number. So what that'll do is that will email me. This will, whenever that milestone is on approval waiting for PO number, it's going to use this project waiting for PO number email I have configured here. And project's waiting for PO number here. So we've got our header here. We've got our body with the job name. We've got our footer. Fairly simple. Now, I did one other thing differently with this one. I could always, if I wanted to, go into my user preferences and enable that notification and say, for example, maybe do not group in 5 minutes or whatever for this. So I get, or group in 5 minutes for this. So I get those summary emails, but maybe I only care about those notifications on jobs where I'm responsible for entering the PO number, or I'm listed as a CSR contact. There's another way you can configure notifications in ES, in addition to the user-based notifications. There are what are called role-based notifications. If I go into my ES configuration here, I have under the admin area, I have user roles. I have a user role called CSR, and this is a role that I can be assigned within specific projects. And that has a notifications tab. And here I have enter PO number. I have do not group in 1 minute for these notifications. And what these will do is these work in conjunction with my own personal notification settings. These PO numbers will, it's whenever I'm assigned the CSR role in a project, I will automatically get the PO number notifications then. So even if my notification settings don't have them configured. So what I'll do here is I will create a new project. And as soon as this project workflow starts, it's going to hit that enter PO number milestone at the project level. So you can see it's waiting for a PO number here. If I go back to my browser windows are getting too confused here. You'll see I got a new email that says project's waiting for PO number, even though I'm not configured for that email personally. I got it because I'm a CSR role in this project. So that's another way you can handle these. You do have to be careful. There is one pitfall with this, is that it is possible to double dip. So if you have I was doing some testing, and if your notification setting is identical to what the role has, it's pretty good at detecting that and not sending 2 emails. So if I had a role where I had file upload set to every 1 minute, or every 1 minute for file upload, non-grouped, and then I had my individual setting was identical, then I wouldn't get 2 emails. But if I had a file upload that was set to not grouped, and this role had a grouped file upload notification, I could wind up double dipping and getting 2 emails. We've had cases of tickets in the past where people have had both role and user-based notifications turned on at the same time and wondering why they were getting a ton more emails than they expected. It is generally a good practice if you're doing that. If you're using an email as a role-based notification like this, tell people not to turn it on in their personal profile too for that specific notification. But now the second option I have in here that I set up, I wanted to do this on the individual level. I have when this PO is approved, actually I think I'll just show it to you and then we can I don't think I need to set any settings in here for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. But yeah, I'll show you the email first, then we can look into how it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and prove this. I'll type in a PO number there. And now I get another email telling me that as an uploader, perhaps, the PO number has been entered for this project and is ready for my files. So I got an email here, eTrack Collector's monthly project. Some project has successfully been assigned. This PO number is ready to receive file uploads. Files can be uploaded as this hot folder path. As this is an automated system, uploads must be named correctly. Here are the naming conventions. And it's got some naming conventions for what's expected for this job. I have that same template set up in this other project here. So let me go ahead and create this. I'll enter a different PO number here. And we check back here, we'll see this time we got, we should hopefully have in another second. Still probably waiting for the notification cycle. I'm going to be paranoid and check my settings anyway. Yeah, there we go. So you can see we got another email this time, and same kind of deal, but you'll notice this one has a different path, and this one has a different naming convention from the previous one we were looking at. Yeah, I should delete this one. I can. So you can see this one has story code in the naming convention listed here, and has a different SharePoint listed from this one. Doesn't have like the story code, for example. It has a version code listed. So this is another milestone. As far as setup, this is another milestone notification. What I did for this was I set up at the customer level. For each of these customers, I put in a file submission info job ticket here, and I put in a hot folder path, and I put in some HTML code for how to format that naming convention. Because this is a real problem that some customers have, is if you're doing a hot folder uploads, sometimes to map those to correct project, you need or you want really rigid naming codes. But end users don't always remember those. It's handy to have them in the notification itself. So I wrote some HTML code in here that for the specific customer lists that path and lists the naming convention. Then from there, I made a milestone. Under my notification templates, I have, yeah, this was for the enter PO number I did for when the milestone is ended rather than when it's on approval. So when that enter PO number approval is done, then it uses the ready for uploads mail template. And this mail template has my customer code. And this is, I think, another good example of this template would not work well at all with grouping. If I did try to group this, you'd get the header for only the subject line for only one of the customers. And then this body section down here this would repeat once for every file, which would be kind of clunky here. But this is an email that works really well not grouped. It has a lot of information. It's clean, and here I'm just pulling. I've got my customer name, project name, link to the files. This is all the information. I did put it in the body just in case someone did hit grouping. And then I'm calling here that customer level metadata for the hot folder path and the naming convention. And you can stick a lot of information in these. I know we have a few customers out there who they don't like customizing these emails for specific customers. So in their main templates, they'll just put an email, like a header, like customer metadata. They'll put like customer name, header text. So that way they can just type it in a preferences window rather than having to make new mail templates. So that's another way you can simplify this. And you can call, even if you have in the workflow, you want to set like a unique value in the workflow. Like, you know, if a file goes down a different branch, you could change the text in an email based on which branch of the workflow that went down, just by writing different values into metadata and then calling that in your mail template. So that can be a very powerful way to customize these. So now I'm thinking, I know we're getting short on time. I think I should be able to wrap this up in another 15 or so minutes.
15?
I'm almost. I wanted to do sharing and output channels, but I wanted to go over a few of the pitfalls with these first. I know it's a long time to go over mail. I'm just trying to cover as many bases as I can here. So as far as the common pitfalls we run into with these, the first is, like I said, with the grouped mails, where you'll sometimes get, if you try and group and you use customer or job-specific information in the header or subject line, that tends to be misleading. So the best workaround there is to leave the subject and header and footer agnostic if you know you're going to be doing a lot of grouping. If you're going to be using these as not grouped emails, then it's fine to go ahead with it. Another one is double dipping with the role in the user-based notifications, where if you have, for example, a role that has, if you had file upload notifications enabled for this role, and then I had them enabled for my individual user, you run the risk of double dipping there. One odd one I saw recently was we had someone set up in ES recently, like a fake user. They wanted to send an email to someone who didn't use ES. So they made a user account and they left the login allowed unchecked here. And I think it sent the mail, but the links in the mail were not valid because it couldn't check, I think it couldn't check like what permissions the user should have had to view files. So it sent out these garbage links. I think we have a ticket in with Dalim on it, but if you have a case like that where you wanted to register someone as a user so they can get these notifications, but you didn't want them to log in, then I would give them just like an impossible username and password that they're not going to guess and that you don't tell them. But those notifications, the links and notifications won't work correctly if that's login allowed is unchecked. Now the last one that I'll mention, because this is a special case that has caused us a lot of grief over the years, is file. It's on. Let me set it for my user. I'm going to disable everything else in my notifications, pretty much except for this file and approval summary. If you're using ES5 or earlier, this still exists, but it's called file and approval reminder instead of summary. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set that to, it's not clear from how Dalim has this set up in here. It's really easy to mess this up. So I'm going to set to do not group 1 minute from my email. I'm going to go into one of these projects where I'm a approver, and like this project, and I'm going to dump in, I'll make another new project, and I'm going to dump in a bunch of PDFs. So I added a whole bunch of these here, and we'll go check our mail. Actually, it would help if I need to add myself as an approver, otherwise Actually, am I already an approver in here? No, I'm not. Let me redo that. Yeah, those are going to... We should in a few minutes start getting a floodgate from this. One of the problems here is that that file unapproved reminder, what that does, or file unapproved summary, what this does is this is supposed to remind you of when there are files in the system that are at approval, that are waiting for you to approve, that haven't been approved yet. And the cycle works a little differently here than it does for the others. In this particular case, what the cycle does is, yep, we can see we're starting to get a ton of emails here. What this does is every time that cycle rolls around, it's not like the others where the cycle tells it when to compile and send an email. This is, it will send an email for the file unapproved summary every time that cycle rolls around. So every minute, what this would do is for every single file in this, every minute for every file in the system that I can approve but haven't, it'll send me a single email in this case. So you can see we've got 12 emails. In another minute, that's probably going to be up to 24. When I was testing it earlier today, I stepped away for like 10 minutes and I came back to a few hundred emails. So we've had a few cases where people accidentally checked that on. I think one case where someone turned it on by mistake in a role-based notification that got pushed out to a ton of users, and there were users wondering why they were getting thousands of emails per day from this. So that is, because I'm getting one specific for each of these. I'll keep getting those every minute. So you can actually see if we go to that, yeah, there we go. We got another batch because another minute went by. So every file in the system that I could approve just sent me another single email. It's a good option, just misleading. Generally, if you were going to do this, the best way to do it would be to do it grouped and do it, give it a very long cycle. So like 24 hours would be a good one here, like one day. So you get a grouped email once a day telling you things you could approve, things that you could approve that aren't approved. So, and it's actually good because it shows you, we've got something we can look at in here under the monitoring for troubleshooting. So if I go to notification monitoring here, I won't cover this too much because I know Mike did a good webinar on some of the new mail stuff in ES6 a while ago. This can show you ongoing notification events that it's collecting information towards. So you can see I've got 6 notifications cycles queued up for this file and approval summary. This tells you how many things, for example, if you're grouping, if you have like a project modification one here for Tom Throwback, this shows that tomorrow at midnight, he's going to get an email showing him notifications on project modification, and that email is going to contain information on 3 emails. So you can use this. You can use this to track what notifications ES is working towards. You do also, because I know in older versions of ES, like ES5, we've had issues with mail queues getting backlogged. You can use this outgoing to watch to see what emails ES is going to send, so that you can see what's currently in the queue if it is backlogged, and pause the queue if, for example, it gets flooded and you don't want to send out a whole bunch of mails. You do also have the ability to do a history in here where you can see information on mails that has been sent out today, and I can see like an example of them, who got the mail. It tells me what notification template. The one thing I don't think it shows you in here is, it used to in the event log, I think it probably still shows it there, is you could see what specific trigger kicked off the mail. I guess it has information about these files, what it shows you now. I think it used to show you the specific name of the event that kicked it off, so like file and approval or file upload. So if you were trying to figure out where a mail came from, you could see what kicked it off, but I don't see a good way to do that here. I know we're running short. 2 things I'm going to try and cover really quickly so I don't go on too long about mail. One is digital delivery mails. So the notification system is when you've got these certain prescribed events in ES that you want to cause mails. And I'm actually going to turn off that thing because we're up to 30 mails here already. So that is a good caution on that option, file and approval summary or file on approval reminder to watch out for. One thing that actually trips me up in here too is I always tend to confuse do not notify and do not group. So that's one thing to watch out for too. But what if you have a case where you want to send a mail, but it's to someone who's not a user in ES, or it's a case where it's a mail that's not linked to any notification. You want, as like a one-off somewhere at some point, you want to send a mail, but you don't want it to be linked to a milestone or one of these other things. You can, under I/O output channels, this is typically meant for where if you want to deliver a file to a specific path, but you can also use the output channels in the digital delivery tool to send ad hoc mails. So I have an example here of I sent at the end of my workflow, I want the printer to get notified that files are being delivered for a certain project. The printer in this case is not a user in ES, so and if I don't want them to create like a fake account for them, this is the way I can send an email to them just explicitly, just as a one-off. So I have this set as someprinter@example.com, press files delivered, and I've got my text here. Now the way this works in my workflow is I'll actually upload a file here. I'll actually kick off the workflow to the point where this happens. So let me upload a file to my project. I need to push at least one file through the project before this will consider the project done. But in my project workflow, once I approve this file, I have a digital delivery step in there that's then pointed to that output channel. Try that again. Project workflow. Yep, I have a digital delivery that's set to that notify printer output channel. And so if I go ahead and approve my file, approve all the files in the project, then the project workflow, when it's all done, sends a reply to mail to my printer here. Press files have been delivered for the following project. I've got all my info in here, and that was a good one-off. There is one other way you can use these internally if you want to send role-based notifications. So I made a slightly fancier variant of this. As you can see in this project, I am configured as the CSR role. So what you can do is you can use those roles as the recipient in a output channel email. So one thing I'll do here is I have another output channel here. It's just a repeat of the same one we just showed, but I've got two things in here. I've got, in this case, printer name. Maybe I want to send, rather than sending to a hard-coded email like the other one just sent to some printer, maybe I want to send to the printer that's configured in the job ticket for this customer. I have a piece of metadata we'll set in a minute, job metadata webinar printer name. And I have I put the variable thing around my CSR role name. What this is going to do is it's going to send mails to my printer chosen in the job ticket, a specific printer handling that job, and then a mail to the CSR is basically CC'd on that mail as well, so they know what's going on. So I'm going to go to my workflow real quick, and project workflow. I'm going to change this to use the fancy one. And I'll create a new job real quick. Fancy mail. We'll go to our webinar project settings. I'll make my printer Litho King. We'll say we're printing in Chicago. We're going to first off get our mail here about a project waiting for a PO number, just to recap some of the things we've shown. I can enter my PO number in here. My project is to show the other mail we were just working with earlier. Sort of a recap, we've got our file upload notification. I'll go ahead here and we'll push two files in. I'll approve one of these. Because the project is not done, all the files have come in, I haven't hit that job completed, and I haven't triggered that final press files delivered mail yet. When I approve the second file, that's going to trigger, and this time that's going to go out to, yep, you can see this time this sent two mails, one to my my user account because I'm the CSR, and one to the printer. and that's got all my information. And that's sent specifically to the Litho King printer that we selected in this job ticket here. And then the other one went out to me because I was listed as a CSR in this project. So now the very last thing, and then I will stop blathering on here, is sharing links. If you've got a case where maybe you want to share out some file to someone in ES, you can always go into Edit, Sharing, Share Documents, and if you've played with this before, typically if you choose these settings, it'll like View and email or HTML. It'll pop up a little link you can copy and paste. With the email one, if you don't choose an email by default, it'll open a new. I do View as email. It'll pop open a new mail in my mail client with that information. But if you go in here and you actually select a recipient in here, I think you can just type emails in here ad hoc too. I'll do View as View on the web. Then Daphne should get a mail here in a minute. Unless I did the wrong thing. Try that one more time just in case I hit the wrong button.
Last item, you know it's going to give you trouble. You still got to share his email.
Yeah, share his email, download.
Yeah, you did HTML.
Yeah, I thought that. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that was my mistake. So you can see we got our link there. The default for this is really plain. If you want to customize that, that's under, again, that notifications. There is a sharing thing in here, and you can link that up to a custom sharing email template that's a little cleaner. So you can also do that directly in the workflow if you want to send out sharing links to third parties. Typically what you would do is if you go into the workflow, I'll just make a really quick workflow here. I'm not actually going to hook everything up. Let's do input file, preview generation, and events. I can remember where it lived. Sharing. Yeah, there we go. So if you wanted to share out like a soft proof link to a file, you can do that from directly within the workflow. And if we run something through this workflow, push this in here. Then what we should get at the end after the sharing step is if we do a show context, I think it's under variables here. I probably didn't put all the right settings in here, but you'll get a sharing URL in here. And then you can then use that with that $ syntax in the output channel email to deliver that to someone who's not an ES member, to a mail group or whatever. So, but that's pretty much the gist of it. So does anyone have any questions?
All right, we're going to go back to the question earlier on grouping. Mike did some testing. So Mike, you want to comment on what you found?
Yeah, this was the question about whether the files on approval or the rejected files would go out in separate grouped emails. And I tested it here, and they definitely go out together, and it's regardless of whether they're set up to use the same notification template or different notification templates. So I think all of us would have said beforehand they'll go out separately, but they go out grouped. So that might be something we can ask Dalim about.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wonder if that's
maybe
the same mechanism for those specifically approvals and rejections.
I mean, I think it also, I think, can depend on the timing of things. You know, if one is set to go out every 5 minutes and the other one is set to go out every 8 minutes or something like that, it can almost depend on how those timings overlap. Mine were set the
Yeah,
same, so when they went out, they both got grouped together. So it
yeah.
might be possible to trick them by giving them slightly different time settings, so they never
Yeah.
overlap.
And that may
Yeah,
have been the case and what we were thinking. Yeah.
yeah.
So thanks for correcting us on that on the question, Jen.
Yep, that's a good catch. My guess would be, and you guys can correct me if you think I'm wrong here, I think that would only apply to the approvals and rejections though, because file uploads and file and approvals don't tend to get grouped. So
Yeah, again, it depends on your settings and if they're different. So it could definitely change it on that notification cycle. But I think that's it. We covered it. So thanks everybody for hanging on a little bit long with us. And as soon as we know the topic for next month's webinar, we'll get that out to you so everybody can get registered for it.